Good afternoon, everybody. Hope we're doing well. Yeah, it's nice to be here in beautiful Jekyll Island on a very cool and moderate day. We can all agree on that. I'll tell you what, when these indexes constantly in the triple digits, I don't know. I guess we're going to just have to get used to it. But it's great for Rose Lane and I to be here. I think it's exciting what's happening with the Georgia Forestry Foundation. You're going to hear a lot about that in the coming 45 minutes or an hour or so. And so I'd like to start by introducing the panel. I think you know everybody here, but let's start with Andres Villegas. Hey, let's give Andres a round of applause for his great leadership. GFA, so proud of you, man. Really appreciate all that you have done. And of course, we also have Ember Bishop Bentley. Ember, of course, used to be, yeah, give it up. Most of you know she was in Governor Deal's office for a while, but we're proud to have her with us now, and right where she belongs to be. So thank you, Ember. And thank you for the logistics in helping Rose Lane and I get here today. We appreciate all of that. We have Megan Frame. She's head of marketing and communications. Give it up for Megan. She's been doing some great outreach on behalf of GFA and the foundation. And then we also have Erin Hames, an attorney and former classroom teacher, president of Reform Education, which is a firm focused on educational opportunities for all of our Georgia children. And thank you so much for being with us, Erin. Okay, we're going to start with a presentation about the foundation, bring everybody up to speed with that. I'll let these guys, Ember's going to kick it off, and then we'll have a panel discussion, and then we will have some time afterwards for some questions, so you guys be thinking about any questions that you might have about the foundation. Okay. Ember?
So I'm going to come to my pulpit. I'm going to open it up with, I grew up in a Baptist church, and we were all about prayer meetings, right? And so after today, and you hear what we have to say, if it doesn't make you want to give or help us get money, then either your wood's wet or our message is wrong. So I just want to make sure they get an amen, praise, that sort of thing. So thank you all so much for coming. And thank you so much, Chuck, for being with us today. We really appreciate your time. And thank you, every single person in the room, everybody that contributes to 133,000 forestry jobs across the state, $32.2 billion in economic impact. Take that, film, $9.6 billion. So we're working hard to spread that good message about, look at all the wonderful things forestry does for Georgia. Look what it does to impact 10 million people across the state. So I'm going to get my little flipper here. And we'll start out with the core values. As Andres has mentioned, the new direction of the association and the alignment of these three core principles is what focuses the foundation's work. And so based on those three core values, we have a new mission and vision statement. And I don't know how many of you in the room have heard this, so I'm going to just go ahead and read it out loud, and it's on the screen for you. But the mission is to sustain Georgia's forests through funding and support of leadership development, policy studies, and education to enhance the economic, environmental, and community value of working forests for Georgia. There's a lot in that. It encompasses a lot of things, but that's what I want us to focus on today, is everything that the foundation is doing is big. Everything that we're going to do is big. The money we're going to raise is a lot of money. The people we're going to impact is a lot of people. We've got a huge state to cover, and we've got to have everybody's support, everybody talking about this, everybody cheerleading it to be able to get that big stuff done. And so that drives to our vision. Our vision is a Georgia that promotes the economic and environmental sustainability of its working forest ecosystem for the well-being of the state and its citizens, because everything we do makes Georgia better. We contribute to the survival, the comfort, and the progress of 10 million people across this state. And the way we're going to do that is we're focused on launching 3 centers within the new Georgia Forestry Foundation. And this afternoon, you'll hear a little bit about leadership development. And what that means is we're just going to create homegrown leaders, people that we can use to be able to be a funnel into programs, statewide programs like Leadership Georgia, like AGL and IGL. We want to make sure that the people that are going into those programs, and when we say we want to partner with you, that we're creating an environment so that there is constantly a pipeline of leaders from our industry that are ready to be champions all across the state in organizations that have been really tapped as being the future leaders of this state. And we want forestry to be a big part of that conversation. So we've got to make sure that we're constantly sending leaders into groups like AGL and like Leadership Georgia and IGL. The Center for Policy Studies, when we're out there talking about what forestry needs, and Andres and Tom are down at the Capitol, we've got to arm them with really good data and analysis and research. We've got to be able to back up what it is that we're saying, and we have great partners to be able to do that. And the Center for Forest Policy Studies, Andres will go into some of the specific things that we're doing coming up and work that's going on right now, but we are creating an environment so that we can do what's best to be able to move our industry forward for the next 100 years. And then we've got the Center of Education, and I'm a little bit biased, but this is probably one of my favorite ones because we reach the next generation. We have an obligation to arm the youngest of learners with our information. We have to make those kids and those students across the state believe in what it is that we're doing, and we have to be a part of that conversation. So you'll hear from Erin some of the ways that we're going to be working with all of our working forest content to become embedded in the curriculum that is taught in schools across Georgia. We can't let somebody else tell our story. Thank you, Wesley. I kind of get emotional about this one because, like all of you, when you plant those seeds for trees, it takes a long time for you to see what comes from those trees, the yields, the economic yields from that. But our seeds are these children, the next generation of kids. So everything we're doing right now is we're taking these trees and we're taking our seedlings and we're making them these wonderful trees and these deeply rooted kids that are going to be champions for what it is that we're doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Andres, and we're going to make this a little bit more conversational because we've been a little buttoned up, and we want y'all to kick back, relax, ask questions, take notes, and have a little fun with us. Andres?
All right. Is this working? Yeah, it's working. So yeah, the Center for, talk about the Center for, yeah. So the Center for Forest Leadership is really designed to create champions. You know, one of the things that natural resources across this country in a lot of ways lacks is people who are willing to kind of carry that banner and be the champions and invest in the time and the energy to go out and just talk to people. And if you think about what dominates our world today, it's technology, right? So we're constantly we're tied to our phones. It's the first thing we see in the morning, the last thing we see at night. The world's moving fast. And when someone takes the time to talk to you, you pay attention. And so we need that in more ways, and we'll continue to do that through social media and other things like that, but we also need to make sure that we have champions that are willing to go talk to a Rotary, that are willing to go talk to a Lions Club, that are willing to go talk to a local school, so that in every level of our communities, in community, government, and business, we have folks that can talk about working forest. It's something that we've always struggled doing as an industry. But you know what? We have 133,000 people that depend on forestry one way or another in our state for their job. We only need 159 champions, one in every county. So hopefully we can find a way to make that work with starting here with the people in this room and the people that work for you and work with you in your businesses whose paychecks really depend on that. So that's one key component of that. But how do we create those folks? We want to put them through a forestry academy, and this is kind of the marquee component of the Center for Forest Leadership, is where we can take folks and we can make sure that they understand a lot of the components of our industry. You know, Dr. Lindsay Boring over at the J.W. Jones Ecological Center, he has a statement that really resonated with me. He said, "Forestry is a big house," and he's absolutely right. If you think about all the things that we pack into our house, in the forestry house, you have some landowners who are extremely ecologically driven. You have other landowners that are, on the other end of the spectrum that are really looking at how to maximize timber production and economic returns. You have a lot of them that are somewhere in the middle. And that's just on the land side. If you look at the manufacturing side, we have, complex mills that are producing biofuels and chemicals, and just right down the road, like Pinova. And then we have other mills that are sawing timber, and so a wide spectrum. Well, one of the challenges that we have, if we need champions to go out to tell our story, they need to understand us. And a lot of us that end up working in forestry end up isolated in one part of the house, right? We're locked in one room, so it's either timberland, or it's sawmilling, or it's wood procurement, or whatever it may be. In order to tell our story, you need to visit every room in the house. You need to understand what's in that house, and you'd be able to go across the street to your neighbor's house and tell them what you're about, right? To use a simple analogy. So the Forestry Academy will allow us to do that. We want to just train our folks internally within so that they're ready to make that next leap and be able to talk to people throughout the state from all different types of walks of life. And so that's an important component of that. And then, another element of that is really working with other groups so that we can enhance their experiences when they're going through either Leadership Georgia, IGEL, or Agri-Leaders programs too as well, so that when folks go to talk about forestry issues there, they're well prepared to do so. So that's kind of what the Center for Forest Leadership looks like. But at the end of the day, it comes down to one word: champions. Champions for working forests, and that's one of the most critical parts of that. And then the Center for Forest Policy Studies. This is something that actually has been really interesting for me. When we kind of redrafted or recreated the foundation, and we said we wanted to do these 3 centers, I knew the Center for Forest Policy Studies would be popular, but I didn't realize how popular it would be. A lot of the folks in our forestry community, there's issues that we've been struggling with for decades. Taxes is a good example. As much as progress as we've made, and great programs like FLIPA and CUVA, there's always something that's still out there that's kind of quite out of reach. And if you look at other issues as well, there's always these types of things that are a little bit out of reach. And so for us, the Center for Forest Policy Studies ultimately comes down to one word. If leadership was about champions, policy studies is about competitiveness. How do we make sure that the trees that grow in Georgia can compete with other raw materials from any other part of the world? How do we make sure that folks that own manufacturing facilities in this state can compete with manufacturing facilities anywhere else in the world? We heard a presentation this morning from the Ports Authority. And you saw all that inbound traffic. That's what we're competing with. We've got to make sure that our assets here are globally competitive. And the Center for Forest Policy Studies helps us be smart enough to figure out how to do that. Facts, data, and analysis that give us better understanding of the world we live in, because it's changing faster than it ever has. And if we sit on our hands and wait, it's going to run us right over, right? So I think, and we feel a little bit of that today, right? So I think that's one of the components of what the Center for Forest Policy Study really does for us. It gets us in a position where we can be more competitive. There's 3 projects that we're currently engaged with already. One is an ad valorem tax project to study our ad valorem tax system and help us with some legislation that's already out there, but really to give us a little bit more analysis and facts and data around that. Another one is trucking liability insurance project. This was something that a lot of the folks that are in the raw material supply chain are screaming about right now. Trucking insurance that's gone up 100, 200, 300% in the span of 1 or 2, 3 years. For a lot of us, if we have a major cost like insurance going up that fast, it makes you wonder if you really want to have the insurance and if you're going to be able to stay in business. So we want to find a solution to that, and we're working with some key partners on that at the University of Georgia, as well as feeding off some work that Forest has been doing as well. Both in the ad valorem tax project is also at the University of Georgia. And then with mass timber, we want to make sure that people want to use wood products to build in this state. There's some really innovative technology with cross-laminated timber. Last time I saw Chuck Lavelle was out in Portland, Oregon, where we were both at a conference that was focusing on that. So later this year in October, we're going to have a conference with, September. That's going to be in conjunction with Georgia Tech, the University of Georgia as well, Cornell as another sponsor, and also the Georgia Forestry Commission and a few other sponsors. Woodworks is another big one. But, I don't need you guys to be in there. And I know that sounds weird from your head of your Forestry Association, but the purpose of this conference is actually to target engineers, builders, and architects and developers in Atlanta. The people who make decisions as to whether or not they're using steel, concrete, or wood. And we want to show them how sustainable, how cost-effective, and how practical using wood, and in particular mass timber like cross-laminated timber can be for the future buildings in Atlanta, especially as we go higher and higher with wood. There's over 1,000 buildings built in Europe already using cross-laminated timber technology. It's proven technology. We just need to bring it home. And the gateway for us to do that is through architects, builders, and engineers. So that's what, those are the active projects that are currently going on through the Center for Forest Policy Studies. And as we look down the road, on the horizon, we want to understand what it takes for us to grow economically, as well as what it takes for us to be more competitive versus other states. So there's some other projects there that are in the pipeline, but hopefully we'll get those funded and off the ground soon. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm really happy to be on this team and to be working to ensure that all teachers in our state have access to resources to help them teach students about the importance of our working forest. Today, we currently have some strong resources that are available to train teachers on how to educate students about the importance of working forest. And many of our most dedicated teachers who are well connected and are already bought into supporting our cause are already using those resources. But our goal here is really to reach more teachers to in turn reach more students. This slide shows you the big picture of the K through 12 public school landscape in Georgia. We have 1.7 million students in Georgia. Those students are taught by 110,000 teachers. They're in 2,291 public schools that are located within 180 school systems. And so there are a lot of teachers to influence, kids to influence, and a lot of people that we want to reach. When we look across that public school landscape in the state, we recognize that 44% of those students are in the 10-county metro area. Most of those students are never going to set foot on one of our working forests, and that's important. It should drive the way that we are trying to educate them, because today's youth will be tomorrow's leaders, and it's imperative that they understand the importance of the work that you do every day and the importance of having sustainable working forest for our state and for their everyday lives. It's not hard to convince students in Metro Atlanta that they need to protect an animal or they need to conserve a resource. They get that message from a lot of different places. Our job here is far more difficult. Our job is to teach them the importance of working forest. It's to help them understand the dynamics of a working forest and how they make sense not only for the environment, but how they make sense for our economy and how they make sense particularly for rural communities where most of our forests are located. Students need to understand this personal connection and how this is relevant to them. They need to understand that without our forests, they don't have clean air to breathe and they don't have clean water to drink. We can use technology to take a student that's in a classroom in downtown Atlanta, and we can place that student in the center of one of our working forests surrounded by pine trees. We can also take that student to an advanced manufacturing site where we're taking cellulose and making it into a smartphone screen or making it into a football helmet. So we can do this now in a way that's incredibly engaging to students. Georgia Public Broadcasting is a partner that we have begun working with. And they're already doing this all across the state. They're taking students to our state's historic sites. They're giving students access to the various geographic regions in our state, all while they sit in their own classroom, wherever that may be in the state. Earlier this year, 45,000 students during one school day, 45,000 of our public school students were transported virtually from their classrooms to Gray's Reef off Skidaway Island, not too far from here, for an educational excursion to learn about our barrier reefs. And that's an incredible opportunity. It's an incredible ability we have now to expose students to things that they could never see firsthand in previous generations. So by working with strong statewide partners like Georgia Public Broadcasting, we can ensure that students learn the importance of protecting and sustaining our working forest today and into the future. As educators, we have a great responsibility, a really difficult job and a great responsibility. In addition to teaching kids reading and writing and mathematics, we also have to teach them how to be responsible citizens and how to be stewards of our resources. And in Georgia, it's incredibly important that that include being strong stewards of our working forest. So by developing resources that will be aligned to the core content standards, so they're aligned to the standards that teachers are charged with teaching and students are expected to know, that piece is really critical. By doing that, we'll give them the tools that they need to equip our students. Thank you.